Welcome, welcome. We are today starting here at Let's Talk Trade. We have Beka with us today, and we're going to have a lovely, lovely chat about Ethiopia. Now, welcome, Beka. Welcome for
Thank
joining
you.
me in
Thank you
this
so
lovely
much.
session.
Yes, it's fantastic to be joining you in this session and to start this Let's Talk Trade series.
That's amazing. So, Beka, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're actually Ethiopian. You're sitting in Addis, isn't that?
Yes, I am an Ethiopian. Yes, I am sitting here in Addis Ababa, as I often refer to it as the capital city of Africa. The African Union sits here. Yeah, so just to give you something about myself, I'm currently working with Blue Blocks, a Swiss-based cross-border trade management consulting firm covering regions such as Africa, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and go beyond that. I have a background in trade law, investment law, and also I have a background in public international law. So yeah, I think this in a nutshell will provide my professional background and who I am. I would say, and yeah, I'm very excited to talk about my beloved Ethiopia.
That is fantastic. So, yes, for the listeners out there, Beka and I started working together. I think, what's it now, Beka? Is it about 6, 7 years ago?
7 years,
It's
7 years now.
incredible. And journeying together in the Blue Blocks arena has been an absolute pleasure. And it is a lovely journey to take together. I think if we actually started working together because of Ethiopia, no? I mean, that was 2018. Yes. I think we did a project for a client on export and requirements of Ethiopia. Now, I'm convinced Ethiopia have come a long way since 2019. I mean, back in the day, it was quite interesting. I mean, Ethiopia was one of those countries. I mean, everybody is aware, or well, let's say what everybody thinks a lot about Ethiopia. Ethiopia has been branded as one of these markets where people are hungry, people have no food, people have nothing, and it's like almost the poster picture of Africa, which is the saddest point, right? And on the flip side, I don't see Ethiopia like that anymore. It would be lovely to hear what have you experienced living in Ethiopia? What is its journey? Enlighten us a little bit. Where was Ethiopia in 2018, and maybe perhaps even before that? And kind of, you know, what was the main point that made Ethiopia change, you think, to its growth desire?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the question that you posed to me has a lot of really great pointers that I need to talk about. I think just to start with the thing that you talked about, that poster about Ethiopia, about famine and so on, is just an unfortunate situation that happened a long time ago in our history. It's just a human-made, starvation that happened. But as you know, that as Chimamanda, a well-known Nigerian author, once she spoke about telling the danger of a single story, which means, if you only look at the big Ethiopia country and only refer to that, and if you assume that that's the only reflection of the country, would really rob what is the truth about the country, because Ethiopia and Ethiopian people are very resilient, very innovative, and adapt into always look for a solution for a challenge that they face in their daily life. So I just want to start from that. That's not or our history. Our history actually goes beyond that. But I think just to give it more narrow focus, because we're talking about trade. Let's talk trade. I would like just to bring it back to that. And yes, I think it's very interesting that you mentioned that since 2018, since I joined Blue Blocks, what really happened. There's a lot that happened. Actually, I was just doing some quick, research and what really happened, especially on trade arena and also on as you know, my background is in trade law. So what are some of the laws that change that will positively, hopefully contribute to modernizing the trade, field in Ethiopia? And there's a huge legal harmonization process happened. Over 50 major proclamations were amended, or some of them were repealed and revised in a massive scale, just to covering a sectorial, cross-sectorial area like trade, investment, tax, banking, customs, labor, a lot of areas. And one of the reasons why this is happening is because the current government wanted to move into liberalizing the economy more and opening up Ethiopia more to foreign investors, and also for making Ethiopia to play a bigger role regionally as well as also globally. And in order to do this, of course, you need to have structural reforms within the country to adjust and amend the laws, the protective laws and all that, to make sure that it is aligned, for example, with World Trade Organization agreements, as well as the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, laws and so on. Without those amendments, the foundational work will not be done. So just to give you like a caveat that what we'll discuss today will be not the exhaustive list, but we'll just highlight the high level of some of the key areas. For example, maybe an investment law, an area of commercial law, customs, and maybe some of the privatized areas. We can talk about that. And I think another maybe interesting point in relation with what I've said, like Ethiopia opening up, I think it's very important, the regional integration part. We cannot really not to talk about Dorothy, about African Continental Free Trade Agreement, because that is the key for not only Ethiopia, key for Africa, because that will give a platform for African countries to trade one another. And it provides also this agreement, countries to somehow liberalize the 90% of the tariff for each other, as long as it meets with the rules of origin. And so we'll talk about that, Ethiopia and African Continental Free Trade Agreement. We will talk about the WTO accession process. It's almost getting there. Ethiopia is expected to join, if everything goes as planned, in March next year. That's what is being discussed and under the accession process. And also we'll talk about other opportunities if someone wants to export from Ethiopia to different destinations. What are the market access? What are some of the preferential treatments exist? We can talk about that. Of course, there's always a challenge, as we know. There's a structural challenge. There's also a trade facilitation challenges. And also there are some infrastructure challenges. As we often talk, when we deal with different challenges of our clients, we often talk about understanding of a country from a culture perspective and so on that exists. But also we talk about red tape, bureaucracy, and corruption, bribery, all those things. We talk about that, so we can cover some of the areas in that. But yeah, there is, as I say, this should be an introductory remark. There's not a question you asked, but there's a lot that happened that we can cover. So as I said, it's not an exhaustive list, but it's just to provide a snapshot of what really happened or transpired for the last 7, 8 years. Yeah.
I think it is beautiful to see what you are saying there. I mean, ultimately, what it sounds like is there is a massive reform happening within Ethiopia. There's a massive change, and a lot of the let's say it, perceptions of what has been publicized about Ethiopia may be misconstrued, perhaps. And what it seems like from what you're saying is there's so many topics that could potentially be discussed that we might not be able to peel back the layers of this onion fully in the time that we have. So let's see if we can peel back some of the layers, and if the listeners would be interested in more information about Ethiopia, then they can let us know if there's more topics that they would be interested in. So maybe let's start with, let's say, the simple practical things, right? If we look at Ethiopia from a pure trade perspective and a practical trade perspective, how accessible is this market these days? Is it an interesting market? Something that people would be interested to grow in? Does it make sense to do business there? And for companies, is it a growing market so that people can know, oh, if Ethiopia is on their map, should it be on the map for their business strategy?
Yeah, definitely it should be, without a doubt, to be in the strategy. The reason is because Ethiopia is the second populous country in Africa, over 120 million. Over 60% of the country's population is the youth. And also it's one of the biggest economy. I believe it's maybe third or fourth in GDP, after Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, and then maybe, Ethiopia and Kenya is always, going back and forth. There's a huge opportunity also in the country because of cheap electricity power. We do have just recently launched the biggest dam, electric hydropower dam in Africa, and the third biggest electric dam also. 70% of that construction is done. So there's an abundance of electric power where whoever wants to come and invest and provide will be provided with a big cheap electric power. For example, people will not know that Ethiopia has become one of the destination of Bitcoin mining globally because of the cheap electric power that we do have. Of course, it's bringing a lot of forex revenue and so on. But of course, it will have an impact on the grid if there's no stop to it, or if they cannot control it. Another important thing that I would like to highlight why it's going to be interesting for traders who wants to come to Ethiopia is the structural change that I talked about. Just to give you an example, for example, if you look at the customs law, the newly amended customs law, I would say, of course, newly, but it's already it's in 2019, I believe, that was being amended. It really provides the traders more power than it was before. I would say it also modernized the customs system because it mandates electronic submission. It also launched the Ethiopian electronic single window system. It also introduced risk-based customs clearance. Just to give you an example, only 10 to 20% of consignments go under physical checks. The rest is, not.
Sure.
And on top of that, also, I think the advanced ruling from a trade facilitation point of view would be very interesting for traders, because one can ask or request for advanced ruling from Ethiopian Customs Authority on valuation, classification, origin, and get a binding ruling, and that will be lasting for 3 years. So this will provide pre-import certainty, reducing arbitrary rejections, and also really gives the trader a confidence, right, that they have the ruling on their hand, they have the declaration on their hand, and say, here we go, it's your decision, clear it, right? This will cut unnecessary dispute up to 30%. Another very important point where we often face in our work, Dorothy, as you know, is the uplift of goods, right, in terms of valuation.
Yeah.
And the new law and regulation clearly states that customs officers or customs cannot just uplift or adjust value without providing a written justification. So there's no there's no subjective increment of a value without providing why that is the case. So that is really another key area for traders. Another important point is, as I said earlier, about the structural adjustment that is going on is, the valuation methodology of the WTO now is incorporated within the Ethiopian customs law. So that means from method 1, from transaction value, all the way to pullback method is now, is there. So no subjective uplift without evidence is no longer, allowed based on the law. So now the key point is, yeah, that's what the law says, but is that what is practiced is another point that one needs to delve and discuss. I think because of the single window system that is already alive, putting up under the trade facilitation agreement of Article 1, where authorities are required to publish their roles and their directives and all that in the website. That is already now been put on that portal. So it's very important, as we always say, and that's why we exist as a Blue Blocks, is just to empower traders, to empower people to understand their their rights, to understand what is there for them based on the law, and just for them to follow the law and implement and apply that is what is required. In order to do that, I think it's very critical and important for the Chamber of Commerce and other trade unions to work together and empower traders just to go the longer direction, the longer route to clear goods, and also to use the tools like advanced ruling to facilitate their trade. I think it's very important also, as it's stated in the trade facilitation agreement of WTO, the appeal process is also there for traders, and it really mirrors what is on what is stated in the trade facilitation agreement, and also on many other advanced countries. For example, you have an informal request that you could ask the customs officer that is uplifted maybe your equipment, and then after that you could go to a formal one in writing and put the grievances there. And within 30 days, you get, a response. If that's not the case, then it can go to administrative one, which is to the director. And then if you don't get any response, then it will go to the, appeal tax court, tax appeal court. And then after that, if that's not getting an answer, then there is a way to appeal it to a court, right? So that structure already exists, of course, for many traders. They don't want to travel that direction because it's costly and it's very demanding, time demanding and all that. But still they can clear their goods, you know, with putting a guarantee of certain amount, and then while they are, you know, disputing the uplift with, you know, with customs, they can protest it and then release the goods. So all these opportunities that I've highlighted makes Ethiopia more interesting and more attractive now than ever. And another, I think, important point is we are strategically placed in East Africa with Ethiopian Airlines, the leading African you know, airline that covers over 60 cities in Africa, that provides a huge cargo services. We're very, you know, easy to access the Middle East, Europe, China, and US because it had a direct flight to all these big markets. So that also gives, you know, a good connectivity of different African countries and cities to the globe, and Ethiopia and Addis Ababa Airport, Bole International Airport, has become the hub for all African countries. So these are really interesting points that I would say why it will make Ethiopia, you know, a good trade destination. Just to give you a latest update, for example, when it comes to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, Ethiopia ratified it in March, I think, 2019, and then they deposited after 1 month. And then it took a bit of time. As we always say, it's from a policy to trade. There is always a long road to go because they, you know, ratification is one thing, but you need to work on the tariffs, you need to work on other laws and regulations to make sure that it fits with the agreement that had happened. And just this month, in October 9th, 2025, this is a big milestone for Ethiopia. For the first time in Ethiopia traded under the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, moving the policy to real trade, joining countries like, you know, Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, Egypt, South Africa, you know, through what they called it, the guided trade initiative under the African Continental Free Trade Area. This is really good because African countries, as we always talk, they need to trade one another. The reason why we need to trade one another is because there's huge potential in the continent, and there's huge potential, as mentioned earlier, about Ethiopia, over 60% is used. But if you look at the whole continent of over 1.2 billion people, majority is the youth, and there's a lot big lever exists here, but there's huge, you know, agricultural opportunities, as well as also minerals, a lot of, you know, great opportunities exist if we can trade with one another. Just to give you an example, you know, AGOA, the preferential treatment with the US government gave AGOA to Africa to trade, you know, unilateral. They give unilateral preferential treatment to Africa through that AGOA framework. African countries were exporting their goods, mainly, you know, agriculture, good textile, and so on, to the US. But with the new regime in the US, the AGOA is supposed to be renewed in September 2025. But unfortunately, or fortunately, what happened was it's not been renewed. So that means that those African countries who were benefiting from this preferential treatment now will not have that access to the US market with the preferential treatment. So what should happen then is now two things, I would say. One, those who used to really export those goods to America, now they can look to their neighboring countries. They can look to other African countries where the need is, right? And then use this already like 90% and above of tariff already been put to zero. So they can trade here and make, I think, that money easily. And another thing is also it will make Africa to think globally and to be how competitive, right? The solution will not come from outside. The solution is within. And if we think what are the value addition that each country based on the comparative advantage that they can produce and trade one another, as well as also when they're thinking about outside of Africa, what are the value added goods and products that we can export and can be competitive globally and use that. Interestingly, recently after the US government put a new tariff on the globe, many African countries also received those tariffs, but some, of course, got really high tariffs like 30% and above, and other countries got 10%. But the issue of AGOA did not really pull back some of the countries from exporting these goods to the US, and actually, closing exports to the US from countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, Madagascar actually have increased since the tariff was published. The reason is because the countries like Vietnam, Bangladesh were put with higher tariffs. So countries like African countries can utilize and use that opportunity to maximize their penetration into the US market. And also the same thing to China. From China recently, in parallel with the US is putting more tariff, the China is going another direction, which is making zero tariff for over 90%, 98% of goods that will be exported from Ethiopia and from many of African countries, because they wanted to put themselves as a trading partner, which they are a very good trading partner as US is, but they're following a different policy at the moment. So if anyone who wants to come to Ethiopia and export to China, which is a really huge and big market, majority of the goods might be, zero tariff at the moment. But I think the other side of that story, and exporting and working with China is, of course, if we are importing finished products from China on the flip side, and if we're not producing the intermediary goods here, and if we are using and utilizing already finished product, that will put a huge, what do you call it, like a challenge on the industrialization and the manufacturing initiative that African countries are trying to take, because you're importing a finished product. So I think this is not China's problem. This is Ethiopia's problem and Africa's problem, that we need to think, okay, what are the, as I said earlier, what are our comparative advantage? What are the things that we could produce locally and should not be a finished product, like the whole, equipment, but maybe some spare parts, right? What are those things that we can produce so that if it is South Africa was producing, for example, an aviation, whatever, a drone or something, what are the things that Ethiopia can give to South Africa so that we can exchange, yeah, the knowledge at the same time, also, trading and so on. So yeah, there are more interesting market access from Ethiopia to the globe. The other one is the European Union, another big market for Ethiopia, under the duty-free access under everything but arms initiative. It's another type of preferential treatment. Many goods can be exported from Ethiopia to Europe for free. At the same time, as you know, with the work that we do have in Middle East, we see a lot of growth in countries like Saudi Arabia, and then also, other countries like UAE and so on. There's a huge demand now for Ethiopian goods and products from this side to the Middle East, and it's only 3 hours flight or 4 hours flight from here to those countries. So yeah, the opportunity is immense and big. At the same time, that there are some challenges that the country needs to work on.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think all in all, from what I'm hearing here today, is it seems like Ethiopia has absolutely, come a very long way. What I hear is Ethiopia has come a long way in reforming its law and aligning its customs law with international practices, with the WTO, with really utilizing the trade facilitation elements, and it is in the process of ascension on multiple levels, which is really great. It as well seems from what you're saying that it's really because of its energy and its investments that it made, becoming a competitive market for, let's say, companies in the data center, in the telecommunication, in those sectors, especially now if we look at the AI industry where we need capacity and electricity to be able to process. So it might be a really good environment for investors in data center processing capacity to look towards Ethiopia as a trading partner or investment partner. And then I hear from what you're saying is Ethiopia is really positioning itself right now as a massive international contender in Africa, really a front runner, pioneer, together with the other big greats in the continent. It has come a very long way in actually a relatively short time. So I would say, given that it's such a rich topic, and I'm sure we can talk about this for hours. As a takeaway today, what would you give to traders, businesses out there, as a takeaway? What do you see on the forefront? What is coming in the short run for Ethiopia? What should they be excited about? If you look into the next, let's say, the next year or two?
Yeah, I think as last departing shots, maybe I think the exciting thing is the reform that represents is the genuine shift, and it's not yet ended, right? So it's continuously trying to improve and have that structural reform to continue in order to make the country more competitive, globally, not only on the continent. Another exciting thing is the energy abundance, and that is really increasing. But as I mentioned earlier, more and more, green energy is being built, not only hydropower, but also, wind and geothermal. And also there's a talk now on nuclear, energy power to be built. So that really gives the country a greater opportunity for manufacturing industrialization. Just to mention, Ethiopia already has started exporting electricity to neighboring countries like Kenya, Djibouti, Sudan, and so on. So that is also another export. But another very exciting thing, which I'm really passionate about, is the African continent for the free trade agreement. Because already now we've started with exporting into Kenya, South Africa, Somalia, and other countries. But going forward, also we'll receive imports from different African countries. And I think the opportunity there is huge. It's just that, the private sector needs to be more informed. The private sector needs to be more educated about, the opportunities that exist there and what are the requirements, the paperwork, and the systems and the processes that they need to follow. But yeah, modernization is on its way. Logistics modernization is on its way also, because it's now, I didn't mention earlier, but with the new law, the logistics sector is also been opened up somehow by the law. So that means foreign companies can come in and also involve in logistics. And previously, for example, the wholesale sector and retailer sector was only designated for the Ethiopian nationals, but that also now is gone. So that means those manufacturers and companies, let's say from Nigeria or from South Africa or from Kenya, who was a big consumer goods, can come to Ethiopia and invest, and also not for Africans, but also globally. So there are a lot of great opportunities that exist, but at the same time, I think without talking about the challenge, it will not be, worth our discussion. The country still needs to continue with this reform, but the next chapter, I would say, is the most important one. It depends on the discipline of implementing and sustaining this institutional reform will take us to the next chapter. If we pause it here, will not take us to where we want to go as a country, and also, as a nation. I think these are the things that I just wanted to mention and as a closing thought.
That sounds incredible. Well, I absolutely want to thank you, Beka, for joining Let's Talk Trade today. It has been a pleasure to talk about Ethiopia, to learn more about its journey, and to be part of its development trajectory that it's on. So thank you for joining, and everybody listening in, and let's talk trade another time. Thanks so much. Goodbye.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.